Welcome to the Intentional Athlete Podcast, where strength is more than a number on the bar. I'm your host, Ross Lela, powerlifter, coach, and co-creator of the Intentional Athlete Experience. This show is for lifters, movers, and seekers who know that what happens in the gym echoes into your life. We explore how to train with purpose, live with clarity, and channel the pursuit of strength into something deeper, something transformative. Each episode, we'll dive into conversation, tools, and insights that help you align your mindset, body, and spirit. Because real growth doesn't just happen under the barbell. It happens in your mind, in your breath, and in your choices. This is about more than just PRs. This is about presence, power, and progress that lasts. Welcome to the journey, my friend. Welcome to the Intentional Athlete Podcast. Hey, what's up, my friends? Welcome back to the Intentional Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Lela. Today, I have special guest on the show, Nathaniel Hancock. I've known Nathaniel for a couple of years. He's been involved with RTS in a few different spheres, so I'm really excited to chat with him. I love the mindset and perspectives that he brings to life and to lifting. I really enjoyed this conversation with Nathaniel because he approaches this in a similar way that I believe. There's mind, there's body, and there's spirit. And when we align all three and we bring all three and integrate them together with training, we get so much more out of our training than just PRs. We find more meaning, more purpose. We find ways to use lifting to give back and create community and be connected with one another and be comrades rather than against each other and enemies. That is the core essence of what we're after, is to create connection and be with people and community. Through that, we have a great sense of belonging. So, without further ado, Nathaniel, y'all. Nathaniel, my brother, how you doing today?
I'm good. Great to see you, Ross.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I know we've kind of had some technical difficulties getting started, but we're off and rolling. And to kick things off, I think a couple of weeks ago, you posted this picture on your Instagram of like 19, 20-year-old Nathaniel all shredded from a photo shoot back in LA back in the day in the early parts of your lifting. But obviously the thing that struck me is, damn, dude's been at it a long time. You probably got a lot of cool stuff that we can pull from and pick your brain and expand our minds. And so I'm excited to dive in. Why don't you start off with a little intro of who Nathaniel is, where you are in the world, what you do, and kind of where you started.
So yeah, that's a blast from the past to bring up the magazine, which really was from just a short stint of my life, the fitness modeling stint in the middle of my university years at Brigham Young University. But I mean, to be honest, I had a really good friend and roommate who got me into competing in bodybuilding and really pushed me, got me a nutritionist and helped me take it all the way to NPC USA 2001 top 10 lightweight. Yay,
Yeah.
But at the same time, because I was lean pretty much all year round. I got crazy lean for the meets, but then I was lean all year round. We just kind of thought, man, this seems like an easy thing to monetize. All these different companies, like Utah had Icon Health and Fitness at the time, so they all needed abs, to market their weight training equipment. And so that magazine cover, Exercise and Health, kind of kicked off my opportunities with local fitness modeling in
Yeah.
those years. And well, it certainly wasn't going to be a focus of my life. It was helpful. It
Yeah.
was helpful in funding my schooling. It was helpful in generating some interest for sponsorships.
Yeah.
uh, I had a massive supplement sponsor in New Skin Enterprises, Pharmanex, back in 2000 to 2001, and I think it was in part because of that type of publicity. So
Gotcha.
now it's been
So,
25 years. Yeah. So
right. Been 25 years. When did you first start lifting weights?
I was really about 12 or 13. I
Mm,
remember, I mean, I specifically remember 13 because we had moved from Provo to Orem at the time, which is just a few miles away. But because my father was a university professor, still is at Brigham Young University, I could I could get into that gym for free. And since I was a
yeah.
teenager with no money, I could pay 10 cents, jump on a bus, and go train in the gym at BYU that the faculty trained in. And so that's what I did at the time. And I remember just really getting passionate about um, trying to learn what the science behind it was. I think my only book at the time was Winning Bodybuilding by Franco Colombo. So,
Okay.
but over time, I got Schwarzenegger stuff, and then later on, of course, we had the internet, T Nation, and many years later, Elite FTS that I got to imbibe. So,
Yeah. So in your youth, what was it? What was the thing that really drew you in, that made you passionate about it?
so I don't know if we're the same on this, Ross, but I've always had this need to push myself, you
Hmm.
know, to feel like I feel like it's very easy in this life to kind of really seek pleasure and avoid pain, just really embrace comfort. Maybe we'll call it the lazy boy existence. Like that, it calls to a lot of people, and many, many otherwise good human beings, I think, give in. And yet I don't see it as the good life. And
Gotcha.
I don't think I ever will, regardless of my age or even what sport I'm doing. And so I've just always needed to feel like I am a lifelong learner, not just intellectually, but also physically. And when it comes to questions of character, and when it comes to interpersonal relations, these are all areas where I want to continue to build and grow.
Yeah.
And for me, lifting has served as an important manifestation of that need. Um, Around that same time, probably sixth grade, I came across a side chest shot of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm
Yeah.
sure he's got a lot of great side chest shots, but there's one that tends to be pretty famous, where you just can't believe, how much of that pectoral is in the photo, basically. And,
Yeah.
and it was kind of a visceral reaction that I had looking at it, just going, I don't know how he did that, but I want to find out, and I'm willing to put in the effort. So, um, and over the years, certainly saw a lot of growth in the pectoral realm. Never, without PEDs and without his genetics, never obviously got to that size and such, but did manage a 480 touch and go in the gym and a 463 pound bench in a competition. So not bad for a smaller guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. No, that's no small task to get to that point. That's for sure. So oftentimes, like, would you characterize, rather, rephrase that lifelong learning of passion and desire to push yourself and push your limits in your youth, was that like just a natural part of who you were, or was there something that pushed you to be in that space and to grow into that space?
I've listened to some other podcasts that you've done, Ross, and so I too, like you, I think about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, and I certainly see a combination here for me. Like
Hmm.
there was, and there is. I'm 47 today. There is a need for me to push myself physically in addition to other ways, and that continues. But over time, of course, the extrinsic motivations change. And certainly as a preteen and then teen and then, 20 something, um, you know, I, I felt increasingly like we live in this world where there is so much out of our control, in terms of what other people do, what's going on with societies, natural disasters, disease, etc. And I felt like this is something that to a large extent, Nathaniel can control. Like, how much effort am I going to put into learning this skill, investing in this skill, persisting in this skill? That's a word
Yeah.
that I love. That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that the order of the thing has changed, but that our power to do has increased. Ralph Waldo Emerson. And so that feeling of control, I think, was helpful, as well as, of course, the desire one day to meet somebody who would appreciate what uh, what they had in front of them, and so. And later, when I met my wife, um, gratefully she did appreciate me, but it wasn't the physical. It wasn't bodybuilding or anything else that really drew us together. So that was also interesting to feel like, hey, I can work on this physique and perfect this physique, but maybe I wasn't doing it for anybody else, right? And that
Yeah.
was a lesson to learn later on in life.
And you learned that lesson just by virtue of when you met your wife and she taught that to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was like you have these assumptions, right? About here's the things that I would love in a spouse or a companion or a partner or whatever, and here's what I think might be important to them. Here's what I think's important to me, and then you meet and you spend time together and you learn more about each other's thoughts and desires and hearts and sometimes you're very off.
Right.
That like you think about all the memes online about like gym bros flexing and going like the only people who care about that are maybe like the few gym bros around you, as opposed to the assumption of, oh, maybe, maybe my partner will care about that. Well, maybe, but not necessarily. So,
Right. I think in that regard that generally when you get especially in a deeper connection and relationship like that, it's not so much the side chest pose that a person is going to appreciate. It's a lot more of like what you put into it and the dedication and the passion and the choices you make to that support that in and out of the gym that a person starts to admire because
uh,
it's the content of the character.
yeah, this is probably a controversial statement, but I wonder if we were to ask Maria Shriver what she thinks about that side chest pose, she'll probably have some commentary, but
Right. I mean, it's not that people don't appreciate the outcome, but at the
right.
end of the day, like, I mean, I think that's one of the toxic viewpoints of most all sports is that the person who wins gets glorified, and that's who gets the attention, and that's what then we perceive to be the thing that matters and be the only thing that matters. Win at all costs. Winning is the only thing that matters. Second place is the first loser. All that bullshit. But there's so much more for everybody to gain from the totality of the experience if we bring into light what that is. And that's the thing is it's just most people don't bring that in light. They bring it into the stats like, oh, this person wins 100% of the time when they're doing this. Okay. But what about it allows that person to elevate at that level?
And even Arnold, whom I, idolize, I still do in some ways, for many years, for the body. Like nowadays, what speaks to me about Arnold? Like I've read all of his books for the most part. Be Useful that came out just the other year. For me, what's super impressive about Arnold Schwarzenegger today, more impressive than his physique, which is amazing, is his incredible ability to, first, self-belief is just unreal how much he's it's just, and then second, the ability to just dismiss and push away all the naysayers all the time. Like it obviously there can be a downside to this, right? Where it's like you need sometimes constructive criticism in your life, but I feel like the reason why he's been able to be larger than life in so many realms is because of how singular his focus is and his vision, and how well he's done at rejecting every obstacle and, yes, persisting in order to get to where he's gotten.
Yeah. How's that played out in your life?
So for me, my goals have shifted over time as well. Like we'll just take powerlifting. So powerlifting, I transitioned to powerlifting in 2011 when I was already 33 years old. So I'd played soccer up to the university club level. I had obviously done bodybuilding, as we talked about, to the national level, and then I'd also been a runner. So I did my last marathon in Mannheim, Germany, in 2011,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
after that marathon, you know we had 3 kids in diapers at the time, and the way that I trained was a problem for the family, and that, like, because of my mentality, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably have this challenge, like, pushing myself too hard was a problem as opposed to not enough. And
Mm.
so my running training would leave me, shall we say, somewhat worthless, for the family after I returned. I'm specifically talking about my long days on Saturdays. And so after that year was over, we had a great marital discussion, and I was invited switch sports, which to be honest, like some people might find that, what, your wife asked you to change? No, this was something that was a good conversation for our family, for me to be more present for them. And I took up powerlifting again, partially because I knew that I loved muscle from the bodybuilding years.
Yep.
Um, but also because I had this vision of, if I don't have to worry about trying to be at 4% body fat or whatever, and could instead really focus on the strength aspect and the performance aspect, then I believed, and it came to be true, that I could have a shall we say, a healthier work-life balance of, I can go all in my training sessions and keep studying hard and learning, while at the same time not obsessing about this sport 24/7, and not every time I'm in the kitchen going, I'm going to measure my oatmeal, I'm going to not put any salt on my tuna or whatever it was. Like, I didn't have to do that for powerlifting. And it was really liberating. I was also very fortunate in that I felt like from 2011 to 2023, every single year was gains for me, despite some setbacks, even surgery.
Yeah.
I had my right biceps tendon reattached, but despite all the setbacks and injuries that happened, I was able each year somehow to move forward even a little bit. And then some years I had big gains, like my years with RTS. So
Yeah. So it's interesting to think about this. I want to pluck at it for a second. When we think about, if you want to be, good, if you want to be the best you can possibly be at something, you cannot allow anything to distract you from putting in all your choices and efforts to elevating yourself in that lens, whether it be powerlifting, bodybuilding, marathon running, the NBA, different things of that nature. Like, you hear that from a lot of people at that level talk about balance not existing. David Goggins talks about it. There is no balance. If you want that thing, you cannot have balance with the other things in your life. It has to be the singular focus. And I don't necessarily disagree with David Goggins' stance on that. I think there's truth to it. I think where it's problematic is it's not realistic for most people. Most people aren't going to have the capacity that David Goggins has to be able to do what he does. So I'm curious, what is your perspective on that? And how do you find that point of, like, whether to know to continue forward in that balance, no balance aspect?
I love this. I think this is probably one of the most important questions, frankly, for elite athletes. And I will assume that you have some listening to this podcast. Um, Hopefully, certainly some in the powerlifting sphere. I felt many times, because I started powerlifting later in life at 33 with 3 kids. Now I have 4. There were many times over the years when I thought about, those who are at the top, and my assumptions about their lives, right? Where I'm saying, that's great for you at, I'm just throwing out an age, 27, single, um, right, with the means somehow to focus large amounts of your energy on this endeavor. And so I could get into victim mentality at times, going like, hey, look at me, I've got the full-time job, I've got the wife and 4 kids, and I don't know where I could insert myself more and still have healthy, positive relationships, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that came up to me several times, and I finally got to the point where I said, internal dialogue, your hierarchy of values. Okay, where, in my case, my faith and my family, and those relationships are absolutely primary to this endeavor in the gym, which is still extremely meaningful to me, but not going to overtake those things that are in priority above it. And the book so I've read many, I'll say, kind of sports psychology books. I think Matt Gary actually pointed me to the first one that I read, with Winning in Mind. Um,
Same.
Yeah, which was a beautiful, because once I read that book, and thank you, Matt, if you're listening.
Likewise. Yes. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, he and Susie were some of the first lifters I met in Maryland, which was very fortunate. But that book kind of opened my mind, not just to the power of visualization, but to the power of exercising the mind in order to be more efficient in the gym and on meet day. Um, and that led to reading book after book after book in that realm, which led to a book that I'm not as much of a fan at. So some people may love this out there. Relentless was the one, it was kind of the one book in sports psychology where it left this negative feeling in me going, I don't fully embrace what is being sold, even though the author, of course, trained Michael Jordan and he trained,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, he's got all the cred and he's certainly got all the profits from his book,
Yeah.
but it was absolutely a win at all costs, cut everything else in your life if you need to kind of philosophy. And while we have seen some absolutely entertaining, brilliant sports people who have embraced said philosophy, I think we've also seen lives fall apart. And so, you can be the most impressive, pick your sport, pick your athlete in the world, and really have not much else going for you in terms of a life outside of it if you're not careful. And so that's something that I told myself, anytime I was feeling down about, oh my gosh, you're not able to dedicate like the same amount of your being to this powerlifting quest. I was like, you know what? I'm good with that. Like I I want to be the very best that I can be within the hierarchy of my values.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's really important. There's a couple of things to highlight and think about there like that. Like obviously there's a lot of different areas in our world, particularly in sports, where there is a big emphasis and a lot of effort and a lot of energy that somebody will put towards trying to be the absolute best. And it's crazy to think about when you look at some of the stats of like, I just often always think about it from a football lens because that was always my sport of choice growing up. But how many high school football players there are compared to college football players, compared to NFL, and how that funnel just radically shrinks to get to that next level and what it takes to really get there. And I like the idea of having those values because to me, when you look at professional athletes that are uber talented and gifted to get to that highest level, but we often see them failing and their careers failing off the field. Johnny Manziel's the first name that always comes to my mind. He was supposed to be the next greatest quarterback, and his career flops out of college because of all these off the field issues. So here's this uber talented, high potential athlete that doesn't have any of those values in line. And the other part that I think about with that inlays with that value from a parenting perspective, one of the things that I've really enjoyed that aligns with a lot of our mental processes around sport is they talk about this idea of it's not that your child needs all your time. It's that when it is time to spend time with your child, it needs to be fully present. It's about quality, not quantity. And when you shift that, and if you're have the family values and you're hanging out with your kid, and what do you think about shifted the value for you in the when you went from the hyper focused diet to being able to let loose a little bit? You dropped into more presence with your kids because you weren't thinking about what you needed to put on your food while you were eating with them. You were able to eat with them. You now increased the quality of the time spent with your kids. Boom.
Yeah, and I'd say even when it came to the training sessions, which at my peak went into 4 times a week. I was on 4 days a week for many years at the end, and they got up to, this will tell you something about my condition. My conditioning probably wasn't supreme, and so sometimes I would have some massive rest between the hard sets, and it would lead to some of my sessions going 3 hours, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
um a lot of people are like, 3 hours, are you nuts? But for me, it was like, I'm gonna get the work in, And if I need more time to feel okay about getting the work in, I will. And so that's, but what I'm saying about even when I was doing 4 times a week, 3 hours a session, I was able to shift my work days to 6 to 2 p.m., which was great. And then to, always be home for dinner. And then also tell myself at any time, if my wife or kids needed me, that I would just ditch that session and I'd come back harder the next day. And so that flexibility, according to my value system, I think enabled me to feel comfortable with my decision to quote unquote put my oxygen mask on first so I could be more present, more helpful to them for the rest of my life.
Yeah, definitely. That's huge. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Um, I tend to think that one of the reasons why people will get into this like level of pursuit where they're kind of making the wrong sacrifices. I think people like that are probably caught up in the comparison trap, and they're trying to so desperately be on the other side of it. And I know you've talked about comparison being the thief of joy, so that's why I wanted to bring that up in this particular lens and see what you thought about that and how that might drive somebody into that, I guess, call it an unhealthy level of discipline.
I'll say I believe we, in this era of social media, in this era of the internet, and massive connection between nations, which has all sorts of positive ramifications as well. We do have, like, the very term influencer. It's kind of a tricky term, right? Because it's like, if you're like me, we're both in our 40s now, Ross, and stuff. So it's like we've been around enough to see that a lot of people claiming to be influencers, you ask yourself, what actually is your value added? What is it that you believe you're bringing to the table? Since in some cases, I mean, I hate to be crass, but it can be simply skin, right? Like somebody's like they're literally a big name because they're wearing little and they're putting themselves out on the internet again and again and again.
Yeah.
And and to me, even if you have 10 million followers, that isn't something that I'm going to say that I respect, or that is going to lead me to want to waste any of my time with your content, right? And so it's like, um I I think the positive aspect is there is so much opportunity to connect with people who do have some knowledge to share. And then the challenge becomes, how do you filter out and decide, where are those sources and how can I get there? And frankly, like, not to reactive training systems horn, but part of what drew me to RTS was I became aware of Mike Tushir in the very earliest years of my training,
Yeah.
and just saw him as, a quiet, calm, no nonsense presence who was just about, and non-dogmatic, right? Just trying to learn more about how to troubleshoot, how to optimize, how to help listen to the athlete and pivot. And so I said to myself, one day I'm going to work with this guy, and it was seriously amazing to me, not just impressive, amazing to me what I felt like we accomplished together in just a year and a half. Because I'd competed 20 times over, a dozen years before I get working with Mike, under a couple other coaches as well. And then with Mike, somehow in my mid 40s, um, I don't get injured and I hit, basically, and there's a story behind it, but basically 9 for 9, 3 meets in a row with 150-pound total increase. Again, in my mid 40s after
Yeah.
all that background.
Yeah.
Um, Culminating with, and I know this is a super niche record, but culminating with the second best in the world ever for 100 kilo tested, 45 to 49-year-olds.
Yeah.
So that's the best I got. But for me, it was incredible and unheard of until our collaboration.
The thing that comes to mind with something like that, though, we have to, at least I like to think, when stuff like this comes up and a stat comes up, I try to think about what does this represent? Because I think so often we see the number and we're just like, oh, shiny things. And we don't think about what that really represents. And to me, the thing that comes up is what you talked about in one of your favorite words. It represents persistence. Your persistent pursuit of strength, whether now it's powerlifting, before it was bodybuilding, but there was still a persistent pursuit throughout the course of your life. And the thing that I start to wonder is relentless left a bad taste in your mouth, but here you like persistence. What's the difference?
So relentless, again, as defined by the author, who was Jordan and Kobe's and other big huge names,
Yeah.
mental coach, as defined by him, was kind of a no holds barred. This thing becomes your god, frankly. Like, it is above everything.
You're right. Gotcha.
Everything else is sacrifice on that altar. Now, I sacrificed plenty on the altar of powerlifting over the years. I put in countless hours, money. I certainly asked a lot of my wife and kids just to ensure that I could have that time. And the list goes on. I mean, I had very persistent and serious nosebleeds, especially the last years of my training, which it's hard to describe to people just how much of a pain this was. But I was basically cleaning up in between all of my big squat sessions, every single session.
Yeah.
That was how bad things were. And yeah, I'm sure commercial gyms would have kicked me out long ago, but thankfully powerlifting gyms allowed me to spray it down, you know.
Yeah.
So relentless to me, while it is a synonym of being persistent, again, the key is knowing, what do I value the most? And then I'm going to throw out another thought here. That which is of the most worth lasts the longest. Okay. So, um, and that might sound harsh, because it's like, I look at all sorts of people that I really respect lifting wise, Ed Cohn, even Jesse Norris, and that might be a name a lot of people don't even know anymore. But
Yeah.
when I was growing up in the sport, there's some kid in Boise, Idaho, who's my weight, who is somehow totaling 300 pounds over the next best in the world for that category. I remember just kind of going, this was December 2014. I just competed in Robert Keller's Washington, D.C. event, because I was living in Maryland at the time. And when I saw Norris's numbers, this was like 2015, I want to say, at like 198 body weight or something.
Yeah.
It's like I had to go around and tell everybody about it. Right.
Yeah.
But again, going back to the quote, like, that which lasts the longest is of the most value. Like, it's not going to be the fame or the, social media, or certainly not any glory with these numbers, right? But it
Hmm.
could be, what's lasting longer. The way that you perform this thing is transforming you, if you allow it, into a person who is willing to, first of all, do hard things. Second of all, and this might be controversial, but I see lifting also as a way to be more open to humanity. Like, I love the fact that I can go into any gym. Here I am in North Yorkshire, the UK. If I go to a powerlifting gym in Leeds, like Graft House, where Sam Watt, the great Sam Watt, trains. Um, if I go to Graft House, I'm going to be, rubbing shoulders with people of very different backgrounds than myself, um, from, you know, from all the different ways you can talk about, whether they're religious, non-religious, race, whatever, orientation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can have so many different ways that you're different, and yet you can really start to feel like you speak the same language, in terms of, we are the type of people who, rage against the dying of the light. We in a positive way, like, we're trying to make the most of the time we have and these imperfect bodies that we have, in order to, um, grow our minds, our bodies, and also to connect with other people.
Yeah, man. I like that. I often, there's always in a lot of places you see powerlifting and bodybuilding, and there's like this epic battle of which one's better. And I can't always, often, like, while I'm not into bodybuilding much, I'm not, I have no interest in posing and flexing. I just don't. It's not me. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, like, we have to sit down and ask ourselves, like, what is the common link? And the common link is you like to lift weights. There's a refusal. There's the rage against the withering away of the couch. Like, I loved when you said rage against the dwindling of the light. Like, because I'd say some similar stuff, but like we refuse to wither away on the couch. And that's most important. And I think if we even take a larger zoom out, like that's fundamentally one of the most important things, in my opinion, of the pursuit of any of the sports, of any physically demanding sport, is what that's going to do for you in that lens. The hard part, I think, is that many of us get too outcome focused and we forget about all those other attributes and qualities that we're going to gain from it when we have that time, when we have that consistency over time.
Yeah, this is what Kath Bishop calls the long win, which is a book that I read last year after taking 2 courses at the University of Cambridge from her.
Okay. Um, what's that? Summarize more of that for me.
So the long win is, and Kath, you'd have to know, she's got a lot of energy. She's a great presenter. She competed, I want to say around 2002 for the British team in rowing,
Okay.
and I think 2 women rowing. And I put myself in her shoes. Obviously, she's an Olympian. I'm not, and we can talk about powerlifting in the Olympics all day long. But I see so many similarities in terms of what she experienced, because she put everything into training year after year after year, only to come up, milliseconds short of the gold medal. And so she took the silver, right? And then having as a very intelligent and impressive human being in the aftermath, having the wherewithal to kind of look at how do we as a society, not just British society or Western society, but in the world, how do we value success? What do we think about, where does this second place is the first loser come from? And is it true? Like, should we think that way? And her book is really about getting away from the short outcomes and being so focused on that you fail to have a brilliant day and life when what you achieved is incredible, right? Like in her case, second best in the world at the biggest stage in the world, the Olympics,
Yeah.
right? And so the long win becomes seeing competition, from its Latin root as striving together, helping each other to grow,
Yeah.
as opposed to zero sum game. As I look back, like I must crush LS McLean or Lane Norton or whoever it was who in my head was like standing in my way of Masters One glory. You know what I mean? It's like, no, these are your brothers, whether you know them well or not, they're trying their best just like you are.
Yeah.
And we can all grow and help each other. Yes, one of us is going to win on any given day, but we can all win, might sound cheesy, in terms of becoming better humans and enjoying the freaking journey.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I dig it. I dig it. Have you ever heard of Alfred Adler?
I don't believe so. Keep going.
So Alfred Adler was, I forget which school it was in, but he was in like the doctorate psychology program at the same time as Freud. They were side by side and they went different ways with things. And Alfred Adler arrived at the idea that there is no trauma. Trauma doesn't exist. And the simple reason, because we are meaning creating machines. So it is whatever meaning we place on it. And I really like it because that was huge in me shifting my story and my narrative of this, oh, woe is me, people pick on me, nobody likes me, I'm a loser. And I had to shift the narrative. And when I shift the narrative and I shift what I believe about everything in my life, everything I experience shifts and changes based on the meaning that I place on it. So, by virtue of that, he denied the existence of actual trauma. It's not to say that a bad event didn't happen. It's not to say that was shitty and it sucks and you probably didn't want to have to deal with it or experience that. And I'm sorry. And we can change and shift the narrative, and we can learn and grow from it. But one of the things that he talked about beyond that was like how we seek a sense of belonging. And when we are competitive, we destroy and undermine the sense of belonging because we are no longer giving to the community. When we are comrades, he used the word comrades, and we go into this competition seeking to elevate one another together. We are giving to the community and we are providing to the community. The community is providing back to us, and thus we have a sense of belonging. But when we go in there and we're competitive, and he defined that as I need to beat you so that I can prove to you, prove to me, prove to the community that I'm better than you, we undermine all sense of belonging, which through a lot of different areas of things that I've read for parenting and psychology and all that stuff, that's one of our core fundamental needs as human beings, is to feel a sense of belonging and significance. So if we want to feel a sense of belonging in this world, in this sport form, we have to learn to go to the meet and be comrades and be fellowship and be brothers, rather than I need to beat you because you're in my way. No, cool. You just undermined all of our ability to have a sense of belonging. Get the fuck out of here.
What you just described like helps me think about who are the lifters that I look up to the most, today, right? And those that I've crossed paths with over the years, and I'm sure you have your list, right, from your own experiences.
Yeah.
But it's like when I think of David Ricks, for example, I think of somebody who he is trying to be helpful to every human being he meets. Is he also a beast? And like, has he had the most impressive longevity of anybody I can imagine? Yes. I mean, to set the world record squat in the 93 kilo at age 58 or whatever he was at the Arnold,
Yeah.
uh, in the 2000 teens, like it blew my mind. But you meet him, I got to train with him once at Matt and Susie's SSPT, and you meet him and it's just like he's so down to earth, he's so friendly. There's no weird edge or attitude about any of his competitors. It's just follow your journey, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um and I love that about him, and lifters like him.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. And it touches on, I often get it confused, but I know both of them think the same way. So I always give them both credit when this sentence comes up. But it came from either Nathan Baxter or Ellis McLean. And but I know both of them said it, and I'm sure Matt Gary would say it too and agree with it. So, but the idea of at the end of the day, nobody cares what you lifted. Nobody's going to remember what you lifted. Nobody's going to remember your world record from 25 years ago. You might, but 90% of other people will not. There's some people, obviously, they have those statistician brains and they just remember weird shit, but most people are not. But everybody, everybody is going to remember how you made them feel.
Very
And
true.
I love that, because I think that it 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 brings the soul and the humanization into the sport and the pursuit of strength. Like I want to I want to I want to lift more. I want to win, but I don't want it to come at the cost of you having a bad day. I want to come at the cost of us fucking elevating each other. Like what are we both capable of, because I know that I'm capable of more when we push and extend each other to see what we're both capable of at the end of the day. So like the idea of coming together like that is huge to me.
And I'm thinking about, so there may be things that I can learn from incredible lifters who haven't yet learned the lesson that we're talking about right now. But again, there are enough lifters at the top level, I think, who understand this principle of kind of what a deeper meaning is, of being a good human being and trying to help others, and knowing that that is not going to hold you back from excelling, but actually will help you excel, because it will help you associate the pursuit of excellence in this sport with joy. And I feel like truly, like, I think one of the best compliments I had from lifting was there's this amazing PT in Utah. Um, and he interviewed me once, and just said, Nathaniel, like when I see you lift, I can't believe you've got so much joy every single time, every session, and it's like that is true. Like that, I think, is why I was able to keep progressing again, well into years that people thought, oh, you got to be over your prime, whatever, over the hill. Um, but I told myself if it takes me 2 years to gain 5 pounds in the bench press, which it did between 2017 and 2019, like I'll do it, and I'll be happy when I get that next little 2.5 kilo increment.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas other people, as you know, sometimes can feel like if I didn't get a PR this cycle, everything is a failure. You're
Yeah.
like, no, it's not.
I would imagine you haven't always thought that or felt that way.
No, I think in the early years, I mean, I'm human like all of us, and I would say the outcomes and the specific numbers mattered way more than
Yeah.
over time. I still wanted the best numbers. I still wanted to be the best I could be, in the world in my category and everything. But over time, I came to realize like, what is this thing you are involved in? It is so much more about I'll just define the two benefits I see of powerlifting training and other training too, but especially powerlifting training. You have, on the one hand, the immediate physiological benefit of endorphin release, right? Which for me has been significant enough in much of my lifting years that I would say I could go in with a horrible day at work or interpersonal, even family, whatever, something going on, and come out of that session feeling refreshed, new, ready to be positive towards those that I love the most. So the immediate uh, change of mood, I think, is not a small benefit to this thing that we do. And the second benefit, which is much more long term in nature, or can be more long term in nature, is what I call virtuous cycles of self belief. And by virtuous cycles of self-belief, I'm talking about, you know, the little marathon Nathaniel who weighed 150 pounds at 5'7" in 2011 thought to himself after competing in 2012 for the first time and doing 11:49 total, like maybe if I give this sport everything I have for years, someday I'll hit a 1300 total. Um, and as that 1300 became 1400, 1500, 1600, and then up to 800 kilos, 1763. So it's like those numbers, not only were they not in my mind in those early years, I viewed them as humanly impossible for my physique without pets. And so the second the second benefit, which I'm saying is in some ways even more powerful than the immediate endorphin release, is the very potent transformation of our self-belief from I have XYZ limitations in my life
Mm-hmm.
to why do you believe that? Your ceiling is beyond your wildest dreams. And that is a gift that powerlifting has given me for life.
I dig it because for a lot of reasons, but in a couple of the different speeches that I have crafted, like I'm in the organization Toastmasters International. It's a organization that helps you do a lot of public speaking. It's pretty neat. And in some of the speeches that I've developed, one of the common themes in a couple of different areas is, as it relates very specifically to my lifting journey as well, is that's one of the gifts that I've learned is that I had to learn to choose me. And by virtue of choosing me, it is seeing myself as a higher capacity than what I am right now. And when I believe that that version exists, that's when my ceiling elevates. Because at the end of the day, what you believe about yourself, whether it be in powerlifting or in business or anything, your belief is your ceiling. That is your limitation. You will never express yourself higher than what you believe. So you have to be able to choose yourself, believe in yourself enough to see that vision further and choose that and believe in it. And that also like fuels a lot of stuff from John Dorenbos. Are you familiar with John Dorenbos?
I don't think so.
So he wrote the book Life is Magic. fucking beautiful book. The first time I read it, I was reading it on the flight to the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus, Ohio. And the first 4 chapters, I'm reading it on the plane, and I'm just bawling because his story is intense. Like, it's intense. It hits you in a way that you are not prepared for when you open the book. And I will not tell you any details. I'll just put that out there. I'll put that bug out there for you and everybody else out there. It's 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 it hits you. It hits you hard, but it's beautiful. He talks about, and his big tagline throughout the entire book is, you can either live a life of vision or a life of circumstance. Take from that what you will, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, like, that hits me, and I'm like, because there are so many years where I lived a life of my own circumstance, and I didn't believe and I didn't see further into the future. And that's what all this stuff, when we start to peel some of these layers back, that's what the barbell gives us. If we
Yeah,
pay attention, if we pay attention, we can start to live that vision and see that vision.
I love it. I'm a big classic rock guy, so I'm thinking of Rush right now. The lyrics: "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I feel like that hits a lot in life too, where we can lie to ourselves and say, "I have no choice in this matter." And don't get me wrong, there are circumstances where that can be a true statement, but so often there are possibilities if we are willing to think outside the box, do something very different than we've done before. There is always something in our power if we open our minds to it and get busy.
yeah, yeah,
So
for sure. Absolutely. Which that's aligns with a lot of Eckhart Tolle's work. And like, he talks about, like, it's not your your stress doesn't come from your circumstances. Your stress comes from you wanting your circumstances to be different. You're resisting the reality of your situation. And like, I think about stuff like that I ponder things all the time in my brain. And the recent one that I ponder in my brain on a question like this is with that Hurricane Melissa going through Jamaica and seeing some of the footage coming from there. I'm just like, holy fuck. Like, one of the things I saw today was the footage of, like, showing the buildings in aerial view, and like every roof is gone off the building. I'm like, oh my God, that is just devastating. Like, how would I handle myself, and if I was in that situation? What would I do if I lived there?
when
And
you make it to the next morning and you walk outside, what is your response?
yeah, yeah, like, what do you do? Like, how do you be present in a moment like that? How do you remind yourself that you have a choice in how you respond to a moment like that? Because that's such a intense, overwhelming life situation. And like, I think about Eckhart's work is like radical acceptance of the situation, and like, his work would be, well, the situation is what it is. Now you choose how you move forward and what you do with it. And it, it's on a different level. And I think about powerlifting is like, this shit's easy. This is so easy. Why would I ever complain about it? I don't know if you ever ponder anything like that and think about what it would be like in a different
I,
life circumstance.
I was going to say, I do. I have that view. And then there have been other times where I say to myself, I will make it hard enough to be able to lie to myself that nothing could be as hard as what I just did in the gym. Right. In order to, if you see what I mean from the other
Yeah.
perspective, to be able to deal with some of life's challenges. Right. And that I'm kind of stealing from Henry Rollins' article about kind of the psychology of lifting that you can find online at Old Strongman, I think it is. But I love what he says in there, basically about like the world might tell you you're a god or you're a fool or whatever, but the 200 pounds is always 200 pounds, right? Where it's like it's the weights are going to sling you the real deal, and I love that aspect of training where it's like they're impassioned, they don't care. Right, it's like you might be having a great day, a bad day, when you get under however many plates that's going to be for you on squat and say I've got this many reps to go, you know it's going to require your focus. It's going to require you to, if it's hard enough, to release all other thoughts in order to just execute. And there is something, to me, there's something very beautiful about that, exquisite clarity of focus in training. I do think it exists in other sports as well. This probably would be offensive to some of our listeners, but I ran my first 10K yesterday since 2011, right? And I did this. I'm still around a 93 kilo weighted person, so I can tell you that that was not a comfortable thing for me to do.
Right.
So I don't have a runner body right now, and I have not been running since 2011. And so this is a different way to challenge myself right now than I've done in a very long time. And yet I derive some of the same pleasure is not the right word, but joy from pushing myself in this realm that I have from training in the gym.
Yeah, you talked about running, so I'm going to have to go ahead and cancel this recording.
Love it. Yeah.
But I mean, I love it because I think that's one of the things that I like to talk about and preach about in this realm is like, what are the skills you're learning and developing, and how do they apply in other areas and facets of your life? Because those are the things that are far beyond and far more important to be gaining from this journey and from this effort than the PR. That doesn't mean don't go get after it. No, I don't use that for complacency to make this journey easier. I say that there's more to gain from this. So that way, especially when maybe the gains and progress aren't as bountiful, you don't have to be stuck in a victim state about it. You can still learn and grow from it. There's still things to experience in that moment.
And Ross, you hit on just a little bit ago, you hit on the incredible importance of self-belief. We were both talking about it, but I think to go back to your question on relentless, not relentless, but persist or persistent, another way to maybe define a difference between them could be that we can persist in choosing selflessness over selfishness and service over being self-absorbed, meaning that we can decide there's always somebody around us who needs our help in having a sense of what their talent is and their possibilities are. And, we all age at some point. Again, we're going to hit our last PR in any lift or even on the road, for running or whatever. Like, and because that is finite, it is beautiful to say, well, there's something that's not, which is, so long as we're on this planet, like my mentor, Ian Burgess in Maryland, is in his mid 80s now. The guy has been competing in powerlifting, training, competing since the 60s, the mid 60s.
Whoa.
I don't know anybody who's been around as long, to be honest. And he knows all the stories about the past of the sport, which is great. But
Yeah.
like, when I think about Ian, he's this small, he's from Glasgow, Scotland, but he's been in Maryland for many years. This small frame in his 80s is still inspiring all sorts of people in the Coliseum gym, in the arena portion of the Coliseum gym of Columbia, Maryland, because he's made it his life's mission, at least from my perspective, to instill not just powerlifting truths to people, but the value of hard training, and how that can transform somebody's life. And so I really appreciate him. I want to publicly thank him for all that he's done for me. And then also remind myself, like, what are you doing today to be Ian for somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. That's good. I can appreciate that too. There's several people that I've crossed paths with that are in that kind of same category. That John Teeney's one that comes to mind. Like that guy is he's always at the gym. He's been in there for decades, and he's always of the mindset of like just looking in the gym, watching in the gym to help people in the gym, and seeing who he can influence and who he can get into the sport of powerlifting, and what when he's at the meet, what he can do to support other people. And he's had a big influence on my life, and very much like an Ian. So I definitely I can appreciate that very much. Of what are we giving back? How can we give back? What can we do? Like that's a big reason behind doing this podcast, between the intentional athlete and what it was before with Project Unchained. Like I'm not a Joe Rogan. I'm not making millions of dollars with millions of viewers off this podcast. That would be cool, but at the same time, I'm not. And at the same time, it's fun. Like I love being able to do this, and it's a fun way to be able to give back.
I'm glad you're doing it. I feel like it's only been kind of in recent years that people have been taking on these questions of the confluence of the physical and the emotional and intellectual realms. I mean, which is why, again, I really appreciate sports psychology, but also books. I'm thinking of like Steve Magnus and Brad Stulberg on doing hard things and kind of like the character behind the training, right?
Mhm.
Like how are we truly using training, whether it's, Steve Magnus was a 401 mile runner. Brad is currently, he's in Asheville, North Carolina, and he's powerlifting right now, which is cool. We've been in touch. But this is a, New York Times best-selling author who studies the science of success, but with a specific focus on how physical training, persistent physical training, can be a significant tool to leverage in the pursuit of success in life. And
Yeah.
so I love, I love books on this, podcasts on this question, and I feel like we're still kind of scratching the surface in understanding how these fields come together and feed off each other.
Yeah. There's a book that just popped in my mind, and I forgot the dang name of it, but the lesson from it, um, Think and Grow Rich, Think Big and Grow Rich,
Yeah.
something. But he talked about how like a lot of these people, like Henry Ford, there's a couple of people that's the first one that comes to mind, but how a lot of those like wildly influential people, like their inventions and their businesses has created a ripple effect that has influenced people across the entire globe. How none of that happened until they're in their 40s. And I think about a lot of these conversations in the sport of powerlifting happening now of people hitting their all-time PRs into their 40s and or Sam Watt even into his 50s. Like persistence. There's more to come, but we have to have that persistence to continue to go. There's one other little area that I want to pluck at here with you before we wrap up, because I know we've been chatting here for a minute. We've talked about like obviously the physical aspect, a lot of this stuff, and we've talked about the mental aspect of a few things, and you talk about the like being mindful of like how much effort you're putting in from a fitness standpoint and a family standpoint, but you also mentioned faith in there on your values. How has like faith and fitness interplayed together for you?
This is a big one. So I'll just state first and foremost, I know, of course, that within your listeners, Ross, you're going to have people all across the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have people who don't believe in a higher power. You'll have people who do, but aren't willing to define or not sure how to define. And then you'll have some within different major faith traditions, or maybe even exceptionally practicing and evangelizing.
Yeah.
And I want to state very sincerely that I appreciate and respect each one of you out there in those categories.
Same.
I say that because division in our world, and maybe I'm a sensitive guy. Like it hurts me to this day, to see it in families, societies. Because now, from a faith perspective, I am a person of faith, and I have very specific reasons for my faith, which would take a lot more time to kind of get across to people, and also to try to find the language that would be understood and appreciated by
Yeah.
those of different backgrounds. But I will say that from a very broad perspective, I view every human being that I see as my brother or sister, like from a global humanity perspective, and that is integral to how I live my life. Um, I I cannot, I cannot wrong somebody, even like, maybe making a short comment behind somebody's back. I can't do something like that without really feeling it and going like, I don't want to live like that. I want to lift others up. If they hurt me, maybe I can feel like I need to protect myself or shield myself or distance myself, while still saying there's probably some reason behind these behaviors and attempting to love them despite that hurt.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is just to define, like, first, how I view the world, and secondly, like, how has faith intersected with my training. I would say that it is empowering to me to know that I am, again, I know this might come off weird to some people without the same tradition, but that I'm a child of God, that I have more value than anything that I do or say on any given day. I have all the imperfections of any other human. Yes, I'm trying to be better, but it helps me, when I don't have a good training session, when I get injured, when I don't have a good interaction with somebody else, to still think, hey, you you do have an eternal maker who understands you in all facets, who can truly appreciate the hardships of this existence, and who stands ready to, the scriptural term, succor you in times of affliction, meaning to come to your aid
Hmm.
rapidly. And this isn't something, again, faith is not something you can hand to somebody else, but I've tried in my life to not shy away when asked to share the experiences that I've had that give me confidence that these things are real, as opposed to fairy tales or mythology. Um,
Yeah.
Hope
I
that
think,
helps a little.
yeah, absolutely. I think the way I tend to interpret that is, especially if we reframe it back to some of the stuff I was talking about earlier with Alfred Adler and the Adlerian psychology, is you have that sense of belonging through your community with God. And thusly, because you have that sense of belonging, you are not chasing the external validation. You're not seeking external validation through your lifting, which is fundamentally important, regardless of faith or religion. That is fundamentally important for you to be able to enjoy this journey, period. If you're chasing external validation, it will be fleeting and unsustainable, regardless of how good you are. You could break all the world records and you could have people going, oh, hey, look at Nathaniel, great job, great job. But you can't hold on to that. You can't carry that with you. It is not internal. It's not intrinsic. It doesn't bring a sense of belonging. It is a temporary pat on the back,
Mhm.
temporary. So I like how that ties in there and that brings that to you. I do want to ask one more personal question.
Please.
What would be the easiest or most important example that substantiates your belief? Like you mentioned that you have different stories and experiences that like tell you that it's real. And I get that this kind of starts to open the door into quite a different like faith conversation, but I'm always curious and open to learn those things. And I think touching with personalized experiences are important regardless of where people are at. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like what is, because everybody's had different experiences and I think they're good.
Yeah. So I'd say the number one concept is that, to be frank, God actually hears and answers our prayers. And that, again, I understand, like, I know what it's like to be on your knees, to be crying, to be crushed by mortality and by the pain of what we can experience in this existence. Absolutely. Like, there, we could talk about things we've experienced in that realm. And so I'm very, very sensitive to the fact that those who have never felt what I'm trying to describe right now, like, I I I still see you and I as complete brothers. And I have had so many moments where I have needed and pleaded for an answer on how to move forward, on knowing that I'm seen, from the celestial realm, so to speak, from God, and having absolute clarity on that point.
Mhm.
Um, like clarity, it's a tough word. Like, how do you describe that? How do you tell somebody this wasn't my thought that came into my mind that told me I am here, you are mine. I am with you. How do you communicate that to somebody else? It's like I want to ask somebody like, "Hey, you say your mom loves you. Are you sure?" You know, and like define for me like scientifically how you can prove that your mother loves you. You know, and trying to have that conversation with somebody. Well, it's not exactly the same, but there's a similarity there where I can't tell somebody exactly how I have received answers to prayers over my life, but I can promise you that I have.
Yeah.
And because I have, I am in a sense a missionary in that like I'm very comfortable talking to people even who make fun of me and make fun of my faith. I'm
Right.
very comfortable accepting that because I say to myself, if I hadn't experienced what I'd experienced, I'd be in your shoes. And I'm
Mm.
fine. And I'm fine with, and I don't feel any hate from you for doing that. I just simply feel you saying that hasn't been my life and it's hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. No, that all makes sense. That all makes sense. I I like to think that most everybody has had one of those moments where something, an idea, an answer comes into their consciousness from nowhere. It's just this moment of like, oh, I could do that. That's what I'm going to do. That's where that comes from. It's
It,
just a matter of how you label it.
yeah. And especially, you know, I always say the easiest prayer to get answered is to ask, who do I need to help today? Right. If that prayer is in your heart or that thought is in your mind for long enough in any given day, I think you're going to get an answer to it. And you're going to feel like after you have the person in mind and then you figure out what it is that you might do and you see the aftermath, you feel like I was led to make that decision.
Mm.
And I'm a better person for having chosen to dedicate some of my time and energy to that person's well-being, even if they quote unquote have nothing to do with me in my life. And that's where I'm like, I think everybody has something to do with everybody else to some extent. But
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think that your your lifting over the years and your pursuit of powerlifting has helped you be in tune with those messages?
I'll say mostly, and the reason why it's not completely is because I have had times, I think, especially earlier in my training, certainly earlier in my bodybuilding years, where the focus was on, you know, how ripped can I get? How sexy can I get? How much can have other people be attracted or impressed by, as opposed to how can I find joy in the journey and being the best I can be
Mm. Yeah.
while really prioritizing being a positive force for good for everybody around me. You know, and I think every single day in every gym we go to, you will have two different people in the same gym training in a very different way in terms of their heart and mind in that realm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I dig it, man. That's all fantastic stuff. Well, Nathaniel, I do want to be mindful of your time too. And we've covered the gambit. We've covered a lot of different things. I really appreciate your time. Is there any last things that you would like to leave our listeners with? Any last minute profound nuggets of wisdom?
So a nugget I want to share with you is that well, I'm going to point to you, Ross. So our listeners should know that you have now 2 years in a row taken the 83 M1 title at the world level, at the IPF level, and that it sounds funny to say, but seriously, like the 93 M1 was in my heart and on my mind for so many years of my life. Um, like I started lifting at 33 and thought to myself, by the time I'm 40, like I was definitely playing the long game. I'm like, when I
Yeah.
hit 40, I'm going to be ready for that level. Well, it just so happened that when I hit 40, There was another lifter who's 9 months younger than me, born at the very end of the year, I think December 30th, 1978, in LS McLean. And I'd taken second at nationals to him, and when I realized that we were the same age and I wouldn't have a single year without him, it was kind of like a, you know, dagger or whatever. But over time, it became that's just fine, right? It's like there's always somebody stronger.
Yeah.
There's always somebody weaker too, right? And you're pursuing your journey and stuff. So in between that feeling of failure at age 40, which sounds silly to say that word, and then random triumph at 45. And I say random triumph because I was moving my family to England in the middle of the school year in October. And so the only meet that I could do was in kind of a smaller federation I'd never competed in, because I couldn't wait until the next, bigger federation meet before our flight. And so I had to compete like in this smaller setting. And yet I told myself the weights are the same. You're going to execute the same as you would. You're not going to play with the 24-hour weigh-ins because you never have, just because my federations never have. And really felt the perfect day in terms of personal triumph and friendship with Simon, who was handling me at the day, and just gratitude. Like I felt it's really stupid. Like I'm choking up right now thinking about it, but it's like when you invest what you invest, when you invest what I had for 12 and a half years straight of your life, not to achieve the goal you thought, but still to be gifted with being able to express all the strength you possibly could on a given day, and to come out, again with an 800 kilo total. Like I just felt like thank you, you know. So I guess my closing message is just find what is going well in your life and start recognizing it and being grateful for it, and do it today.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate that. I know that always shifts life for me when I'm a little bit blue or a little bit down, is finding those nuggets to be grateful for. So I appreciate the message and shout out on gratitude. Nathaniel, if anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So I'm still on Instagram at persist powerlifting. Happy to slide in my DMs, and I'll hit you back. I'm here in Northern England for the next 2 years, and then we'll see where I get posted next. But love to see if you're out in England. We could get a lift or a run together. Either way.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathaniel. I appreciate you, man. You have a good day.
Thanks. You too. See you later.